Hello and welcome to this lab demonstration on working with snapshots. After completing this lab video, you will be able to take snapshots of a virtual machine, revert to snapshots, and delete an individual snapshot or all snapshots. Virtual machine snapshots are an excellent tool to save certain states of a virtual machine and go back to these states. You can create snapshot trees, where every new snapshot is based on the previous snapshot. But you can also save more complex snapshot trees, where you can create multiple branches based on the same snapshot. Whatever your use case is, just be aware that with every snapshot that you add to a snapshot chain, performance will degrade. So do not use snapshots extensively in a production environment, and delete snapshots when you do not need them anymore. For this lab, you should know the vSphere client user interface, and you should have some basic knowledge of virtual machine files. In the first task of this lab exercise, we will take a snapshot of a virtual machine. Then we will delete files from the desktop and take another snapshot. When taking these two snapshots, we will not snapshot the memory of the running virtual machine, so that these snapshots only represent the states of the disk, but not the state of the live guest operating system. In the second task, we will restore one of the deleted files from the recycle bin back to the desktop of the virtual machine. Then we will take another snapshot, but this time we will also snapshot the virtual machine's memory. Then, in the third task, we will revert to the previously saved snapshots and examine the results. In the fourth task of the lab, we will delete one of the snapshots and check if this action has any effect to the currently running virtual machine. And then, in the fifth and last task of the lab, we will delete all snapshots and again check the result. I'm sure I provided you enough good reasons to watch the following video on working with snapshots. Now let's get started. We want to perform the configuration on vCenter server SA VCSA01. So the first step is to connect to this server. Then we log in as administrator at vsphere.local. In the first task, we will create two snapshots of the virtual machine Win1002. Before we take the second snapshot, we will delete two files, or more specifically, we will move the files to the recycle bin. We will not snapshot the memory of the virtual machine. So we have to go to VMs and templates, and then in the ICM data center, in the folder lab VMs, we find the virtual machine called Win1002. Note that the virtual machine is running. So from the summary tab, let's launch a web console. The virtual machine is configured with auto login. So we are taken right to the desktop. And we can see that there are two files on the desktop of the virtual machine. Now I'm going back to the vSphere client. And what we want to do now is to take our first snapshot. So we right-click the virtual machine in the navigator pane. We select Snapshots and we click Take Snapshot. First we have to enter a name for the snapshot. We will call this snapshot with IO meter and CPU busy, because these are the names of the two files that we found on the desktop. We could add a description. In real life, I encourage you to always provide a good description, because if you want to revert to snapshots later on, you can have a look at the description, and that will make it much easier for you to locate the correct snapshot that you want to revert to. In our lab, we don't need the description. Our names are self-explaining, and you can see that you could also snapshot the virtual machine's memory. That means that the snapshot would include the live VM, including the running guest operating system. We don't need that, so we deactivate this checkbox and we click OK. Under recent tasks, we can see that a virtual machine snapshot has been created. The status is already completed. Now let me go back to the desktop of the virtual machine. I select both of the files and I move them to the recycle bin. Now let me go back to the vSphere client, and now we create a new snapshot. So again, we right-click the virtual machine, we select snapshot, and we click take snapshot. And now let's call this snapshot without IO meter and CPU busy. Again, we do not want to include the virtual machine's memory. We just want to snapshot the virtual machine disk files. And again, we see that the virtual machine snapshot has been created. In the upcoming second task, we will restore one of the files, the cpu-busy.vbs file, and then take another snapshot. This time we will take a snapshot including the virtual machine's memory. So let's go to the desktop of the virtual machine. We double-click the recycle bin to see the list of deleted files. Now we want to restore the cpu-busy.vbs file, so we right-click the file and we click restore. We can close the recycle bin here, and we see that the file is back on the desktop. Now let's go back to the vSphere client. We right-click the virtual machine, we select snapshots, and we click take snapshot. Now for the name, let's enter with CPU busy. And this time we keep the checkbox checked, so we do want to snapshot the virtual machine's memory. We click OK. We see that the snapshot is being created. This time it takes longer. Why? Well, because the RAM of the virtual machine has to be saved to the disk. We chose to snapshot the virtual machine's memory, and that means that all the memory of the virtual machine has to be written to the disk. The snapshot has been created. We see a status of completed. Now let's have a look at the snapshots that we took so far. We right-click the virtual machine, we select snapshots, and then we click manage snapshots. And now we see the snapshot tree. On top we see the name of the virtual machine. Below that there is the first snapshot that we created, the with IO meter and CPU busy snapshot. Below we have the snapshot without IO meter and CPU busy. And the third snapshot, the one that we just created now, is with CPU busy. Note that the icons differ. The first two are the same, and the third one has this green triangle. This means that this is a snapshot that was taken from a live running virtual machine, and we included the virtual machine's memory. And that's what you can also see here. When you select a snapshot on the left, you can see more information. So in addition to the name, you see the date when it was created. You see how much disk usage we have for this snapshot. And we see that the snapshot includes the virtual machine's memory. And you can see that below this third snapshot, we have the "You are here" pointer. So that's where we are currently at. We are running on the state or after the state of this snapshot called with CPU busy. our virtual machine was running all the time. So when we took these 3 snapshots, the virtual machine was up and running. Now let's revert to one of these snapshots. We select the without IO meter and CPU busy snapshot and we click revert to. We have to confirm and we see that the pointer you are here is now below this snapshot without IO meter and CPU busy. Let me close the Manage Snapshots window. And please note that the virtual machine is now powered off. We see it on the navigator pane and we also see it here in the summary. Now let's power it on. Remember that we are currently on the snapshot called without IO meter and CPU busy. This was the second snapshot that we created. So when we go to our console, we have to refresh it because the virtual machine was powered off in the meantime. But we see it's booting up and we have auto login configured. So now where we have been automatically logged in, we see that the 2 icons on the desktop are gone. We reverted to the state where we had both of these files moved to the recycle bin. I'm going back to the vSphere client. Now we right click the VM, we go to Snapshots, Manage Snapshots again. And now we want to revert to the state with CPU busy. So we select this snapshot. We click revert to. We click OK. We can close the Manage Snapshot window. And while this snapshot is reverted, we can already go back to our desktop again. We have to refresh the screen to get the session to the actual updated virtual machine. So what we saw earlier was a steady picture. It was not a live console anymore. And when you refresh the screen, we see the desktop with CPU busy file being on the desktop. Let's have a look at the virtual machine. We go to Snapshot, Manage Snapshots, and we can see that the "You are here" pointer is again below with CPU busy. We can close the Manage Snapshot window and the virtual machine is running. And as we had seen, the CPU busy file is on the desktop. Why is that? Because when we created this snapshot, we did include the memory of the VM. So the state of the guest operating system was also preserved, not only the disk. Now it's time to have a look at snapshot deletion. In the next task, we will delete the second snapshot that we took. This is an intermediate snapshot in our snapshot chain. It is based on the first snapshot, and the third snapshot is based on the one that we will delete. Let's see what happens when we delete this intermediate snapshot. So in the vSphere client, we right-click the virtual machine, we select Snapshots, and we click Manage Snapshots. So these are the 3 snapshots that we created, and you can see that we have a single direct snapshot chain. So we took the first snapshot, then we had some changes, then we took another snapshot, then we had some changes, and then we took the third snapshot. This snapshot here, without IO meter and CPU busy, is an intermediate snapshot. It sits between the first one and the third one. So you might wonder what happens if we delete this one. Is that any problem? Will the third snapshot somehow hang in the air without being connected to other changes and therefore have an invalid disk? None of this is the case. We can simply delete this snapshot and then it will disappear from the list here. The updates on the disk itself will be written to the parent disk. So when we delete the second snapshot, the related snapshot file, the delta disk, is merged into its parent disk, and therefore there is no change to the virtual machine as such, but we lose the ability to revert back to that state, because the saved state, the snapshot, will be gone. So let's do that. We select that intermediate snapshot and we click delete. We confirm, and you see that this snapshot is gone. We only see 2 snapshots. The virtual machine itself is still in the same state. Let's have a look at this. Let me go back to the console window just to be sure that we are looking at the live system. Let me refresh, and you see that we are still at that state where we see the CPU busy file on the desktop. So when we go back here and have a look at the snapshot chain, once again, the UR here didn't change. All we miss is that one snapshot in between, so we cannot revert back to that state anymore. Let me quickly tell you a little bit about the snapshot trees. So in our case, we had a chain of snapshots. Every snapshot we took was based on the previous snapshot. You could create more complex snapshot trees. For example, if we would revert back to this snapshot, then power on the virtual machine, do some other changes, and then create a new snapshot, take a new snapshot. Then we would have 2 branches, because from that base snapshot with IO meter and CPU busy, we would have created a new one, and in addition we would have this existing one with CPU busy. So then we would have 2 snapshots which are both based on the same initial snapshot with IO meter and CPU busy. And this way, by reverting back to a snapshot, doing changes, creating a new snapshot, reverting back to that snapshot, doing other changes and creating a new snapshot, you can create quite complex snapshot trees. But that's not our topic now. What we want to do now in the final task is we want to use the delete all option that we have here under manage snapshots and examine what happens when we click this one. So let's go ahead and do that. We click the delete all button, we confirm, and now we see that we have our virtual machine and the pointer that says you are here. No snapshots exist anymore. All the snapshots that we had are gone, so we lost the ability to revert to any of these states. The state of the virtual machine itself, let's have a look, is the last state that we had. And that means that the CPU busy file is on the desktop. So again, we see that deleting snapshots does not change the current state of the virtual machine. It just removes that saved snapshot, so we do not have the ability anymore to revert back to that state. But there is no impact to the currently running virtual machine to its current state. Congratulations! You have completed the Working with Snapshots lab demonstration video. In the first task of this lab, we took a snapshot of a virtual machine. Then we did some changes and we took another snapshot. These snapshots did not include the virtual machine's memory, only the disk state was saved, not the state of the running guest operating system. In the second task of the lab, we took another snapshot, and this time the virtual machine's memory was included in the snapshot, so that we created a snapshot of a live virtual machine. In the third task of the lab, we reverted back to snapshots that we saved earlier. Then we deleted an individual snapshot and verified that it doesn't affect the other snapshots or the currently running guest operating system. In the final task, we deleted all remaining snapshots. Again, we verified that this has no impact to the currently running virtual machine, except for the fact that all snapshots are gone and that we therefore cannot revert back to any earlier state of the virtual machine. You now know how to preserve states of a virtual machine by taking snapshots, how you can jump back to a certain snapshot, and how to remove snapshots that you do not need anymore. Dealing with snapshots is a very common task in a vSphere environment, and it is a great tool to switch between states of a virtual machine. However, do not forget that extensive use of snapshots reduces the performance of a virtual machine. So especially in a production environment, use it with caution and make sure that you do delete snapshots when you do not need them anymore. Doing so will keep the number of chained virtual disk delta files small, and that helps minimize the impact on performance. Thank you for watching this lab demonstration video. I hope the knowledge acquired here will help you with your daily job assignments, and good luck as you continue your journey in VMware world.